So Nathan, as you know, is my eldest son. He is a qualified naturopath, nutritionist and herbalist. He's been working for well over a decade, 13 or 14 years now, as a naturopath at Beyond Good Health Medical Clinic. He works with a bunch of holistic medical doctors and other practitioners. He has huge amounts of knowledge. He researches the research and then he researches it again. But of course, because of all the work that he's been doing with me in parenting, he has really zoned in on how to help families with kids that do have this beautiful intensity. So I've actually asked Nathan tonight. Nathan can talk about so many things, and he actually does pop into our courses and shares more sort of general health and wellness. But I wanted him to touch on tonight because I've had a fair bit of interest in people learning a bit more about pyrrole and ethoxylation. So Nathan's just going to run through that with you. So Nathan, I'll need to, what do I need to do to, so that you can, I stop share, is that right? And then you take over?
Yes, that's correct. Just doing a mic check.
Yep.
Awesome. It should have automatically stopped sharing, so if someone else can confirm, that'd be awesome.
Yep, that's awesome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I was really lucky to actually meet an amazing holistic doctor towards the end of my first degree, and then I was able to be mentored by her and was brought up in a really lovely clinic based in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Full of other holistic doctors, naturopaths, kinesiologists, psychologists, and fast forward 14 years or something like that now. I would say the question I get asked often is like, okay, what's your main thing that you believe that people are struggling with? And I would say if I could click my fingers and instantly like fix all of their physical and biological and biochemical and diet related problems, we would still be left with the psychological. And this is based from childhood. If you look at a lot of Dr. Bruce Lipton's work, Dr. Joe Dispenza, in the first 7 years, we are basically training our subconscious, our self-worth and self-esteem, limiting beliefs. And so as we go throughout our life, we base our whole personality, it builds upon these. And the people that we are exposed to and that mentor us, they can either shape us to this amazing being or one that's a bit anxious, nervous, worried, self-doubt. And although some of these things can be contributed to the biochemical processes that I'm going to share with you tonight, a large chunk of it is just what was said to you as a child. So even if I did have that power of fixing everything, what would have happened if you could go back in time before the 7 years had finished for that child or that person, the adult sitting in front of me, if I could do something about that first 7 years, that's where things I really believe change, because it would change completely who they are and how much stress is being placed on their body because of the way that they think. And the way that they think is going to affect the way that they act and what they do to their body and how they end up, 30, 40 years later, or even younger, sat in front of me with some chronic disease. So yes, tonight I'm going to share very quickly some methylation and pyrrole issues, because essentially the way we feel is really coming from our brain. Our brain makes neurotransmitters, and they're either going to make something to make us feel chilled out and calm, like GABA, serotonin, dopamine to make us feel motivated, and we're going to get a lot of these neurotransmitters from the gut, and we're going to need a lot of nutrients to make them in the gut. And so what happens when we're feeling a bit up and down, sometimes the brain gets a bit confused and it makes too much of one neurotransmitter, or it's the opposite. It just doesn't do anything. And you're just feeling angry and irritated and aggravated. And you might be noticing your child displaying some complete irrational behaviors. And I guarantee the external picture of what's happening to them yelling and screaming is nothing compared to what's happening inside them. It's a small reflection of what's going on internally that you're seeing. And so if you can quieten that down internally, you will see a change externally. the thing to remember is that can take time to quieten the internal down. And so it's a matter of making sure that you're not creating a psychological problem by linking their behavior with certain things. So if that thing comes up again, it might be every time you go to the supermarket and you're going through the aisle, or whatever the thing may be, that their mind hasn't linked that to a certain state that they got in trouble or got embarrassed or got yelled at previously. And so that's why I really love the Nurtured Heart approach, because it's teaching parents the importance of what we say, not to create these limiting beliefs and childhood traumas. And there's only so much that we can blame on our genes. I mean, it is about 10% of the problem. And so there's two things that I'll share with you tonight. And one is called pyrrole disorder. And this is virtually a depletion of certain minerals that occurs in an oxidative stress environment. And for those that don't really know about oxidative stress, well, these are things that we have the ability to change. We have influence over this. It can be physical, emotional. It can be what you're eating, what you're breathing in, what you're applying to your skin. Your environment is made up of all of these epigenetic factors that influence how your body works. And so if you're making your environment a healthy, congruent environment, then you'll see a reflection of that in the body. But if the environment is full of Wi-Fi and electronics all the time, and TV shows that are programming without even basically, looking at what's being said, you're just half listening, it's reprogramming your children and yourself. You're eating foods that is damaging the lining of the gut, messing up your microbiome. You can't even make the right neurotransmitters. All of these factors we have control over. And if your environment is more the latter, where it's not so great, then there's only so much the body can do to keep self-regulating, to feel calm and collected. Again, some people are better able to deal with this because, yes, some of these things are genetic. Just touching off with the pyrrole disorder. So I give the analogy is when there's oxidative stress, it's going to make this process worse. And oxidative stress can come from a virus, parasite, again, being in a classroom where you don't feel safe because there's a bully, or the teacher basically puts you in a box or you're a troublesome child and treats you accordingly. This stress causes oxidative stress. And if you look at the photo, the analogy I like to give is like an apple. You cut that in half and it eventually goes brown. This is damage happening to the cells of the apple. And same with our body, oxidative stress occurs. And when we put ourselves in the environment with lots of oxidative stress, it is going to rapidly create more of a pyrrole problem. And when we do get the pyrrole problem, that then goes on to amplify the problems that you're currently going through. Unfortunately, we're born toxic. You can see some of those stats, and there's a good website, bodyburden.org. Children are born toxic. So I'm doing a lot of live blood analysis and heavy metal and mineral analysis at the clinic. And I'm seeing children just full of heavy metals and have a lot of mineral imbalances. So I know it's their environment that is influencing this. Now, with pyrrole disorder, again, some of us have more of a predisposition for the oxidative stress to create this pyrrole disorder. And if you can think of like a jug full of nutrients that your body uses to make calming, relaxing neurotransmitters, having pyrrole disorder is like having holes in the bottom. You're losing a lot of zinc and B6 and manganese and magnesium and vitamin E. And if your diet and your gut is not amazing and you're topping that up fast enough and you eventually get low, all of a sudden your body doesn't have enough to go around. And now you don't have enough of the correct building blocks to build enough of these neurotransmitters. And you're going to have, being anxious, worried, depressed, irritable, angry, outbursts. You might even be labeled with being on the spectrum somewhere. There could be some auditory processing disorders, all from an imbalance of your biochemistry. And the other one, if pyrrole disorder was the supply of nutrients, methylation is like the programming. It helps our genes switch on and off and send messages. Imagine you're at a set of traffic lights and you're waiting for the green light, and all of a sudden, both red lights occur and it just stays red. At some point, doesn't matter how calm you are, you're going to get irritated and frustrated and annoyed that nothing is happening. This is an undermethylator, which is majority of people. So their brain is receiving information and it's not being acted upon. There's a lag. The brain didn't have what it needed to say, hey, we need some serotonin to feel happy. We need some dopamine to feel motivated. It just doesn't do it. And so you're undermethylating. This process is just not happening. And then again, imagine you are sitting at the traffic lights and it goes green and you go, but then the other side goes green and now you got 2 traffic lights. There's chaos and mania. This is, 8% of people. The information coming into their brain is not even being analyzed or processed before the body responds, and it's responding with a lot of mistakes. And so their brain is so overwired that they just cannot even sit still. They're all over the place. And it's very hard to get things in. It doesn't matter how logical you are. Their brain just is not understanding it. It may as well be a different language you're speaking to them sometimes. And it may not be all the time. It just might be when they're reaching a point where all of a sudden their body has too many things to deal with. And now their methylation is causing them to have issues. And you can see some of those stats there. 8% of people are overmethylators, 22% undermethylators, and the other 70% are balanced in methylation. They still may have gut issues. They still may be full of heavy metals, have parasites and fungus, mold issues, and causing pandas and all sorts of other problems with behavior and health. But at least their brain is knowing what to do about it. We just need to help their body be able to achieve it. And so going back to genetics, as I said, only 10% of the problem is blameable on genetics. You may have heard that MTHFR gene. There's about 10 methylation genes. That's just one of them. And so in a blood test or a buccal swab of the saliva inside the gum, we can check if you have this gene dysfunction. But more importantly, that doesn't tell us right now how you're actually methylating over or under. And so we can test for that. But first of all, in general, you just want to make sure you're giving your body the building blocks, the raw materials to make enough neurotransmitters. And so good fats, plant-based protein, if you're having meat-based protein, grass-fed, grass-finished, including organ meats, these are where all the nutrients are. You want to give your body the best resources. We also want to make sure we limit those oxidative stress, the epigenetic factors, whether it be being in a stressful environment, negative self-talk, other people talking negative around you, yelling and screaming. The whole nurtured heart approach is really removing a huge chunk of what generally is causing people oxidative stress from a psychological perspective. And it is making sure that for the first 7 to 8 years of a child's life, not being programmed a certain way to fail later in life. The amount of patients I see sat in front of me with some chronic health condition or have hit rock bottom, usually I ask enough questions and it's come from childhood, almost always. Now, the other thing, apart from changing that perspective, is doing some testing, as I just mentioned. So to test methylation, yes, we can test for that gene, but that doesn't tell you as of right now, are you an under or over, or are you balanced? And so at the clinic, we do that. Sometimes it's generally not Medicare rebatable, but it's about under $100 to get all that testing done. We're testing for things like B12, homocysteine, whole blood histamine, seroplasmin, zinc, and this will tell us, is someone an over or under methylator? Pyrrole testing is more of a urine test, so great for people who are not a fan of blood testing. That can tell us, do you currently have a abundance of these cryptopyrroles that's draining you of all these nutrients your brain desperately needs to keep you calm, relaxed, happy. And so that's the basis of what I would do for someone, is look at their gut microbiome, look at their methylation, look at their pyrrole, and check them for mineral and heavy metal imbalances. When you can do that and pair that with a very nice, healthy, congruent environment, where the parents are speaking nicely, the siblings are speaking nicely, the child is speaking correctly. Now all of a sudden you have ticked all the boxes and things start to shift. Often we see failures in previous treatments because we were only addressing one or two areas. We weren't looking at the person as a whole, and instead we were just trying to band-aid it. Even with a nutrient or supplement, sometimes it can still be as bad of a band-aid as medication. There may not be any side effects, but you haven't got to the true cause. And that's why I love working with Lillian and teachers like Tim, because they really make sure that what's going in here and what is being spoken is influencing how that person is believing in themselves, how that person is feeling loved. And ultimately, that will be a huge impact on their health come teenage years and early adult years. And it's going to be a big difference as the quality of their life all the way through. What you do right now is going to make a huge impact. So yeah, thank you very much for jumping on. Thank you for having me, and I hope you found or got some great value from what I shared tonight.
Thank you so much, Nathan. We always get amazing value from what you share. And even though I've listened to Nathan hundreds of times, I still learn new stuff, which is fantastic. So thank you.